This video is going to look at the significance of the Haber process. Now, we've already looked at the Haber process in class, so we're going to look at the history of it, how it came about, and what's the significance of it. So we know Haber was a patriotic German chemist. He wanted Germany to win the war, but he foresaw a bit of a problem. Now, World War I started in 1914, so it was about the end of 1912 that he's looking at our potential enemy, which in this case was the British over here, and he's thinking, what can they do to stop us winning the war? And the big one was the import of ammonia and nitrates. Now, ammonia and nitrates were supplied by Peru, and Peru usually had, they came from other places in the world, but Peru had the big source. They had the bats and they had the bird population, and essentially they shipped their poop over to different countries. And that, from there, we took the ammonia and the nitrates out and we created weapons and we created fertilizer. So Haber looked at this and said, well, if they stop our ammonia and nitrate supply, now Peru is over here somewhere, up this way, so they travel through these canals, or they can come down here, to get to Germany. So British people, being where they are in the United Kingdom, created naval blockades. So they had their ships set up, essentially blockades, and said, your ships from Peru are not getting through to Germany, and that cut off their supply. So Haber looked at this and said, well, we're going to lose the war if this is the case, so what can we do? So he essentially said, let's make our own ammonia, and he went to work to develop the Haber process, essentially. So we actually call it the Haber-Bosch process because two people were involved in its creation. We have Fritz Haber, the guy who essentially got the main name named after it. Now, he made a mini version, this one right here, he made a mini version in the lab. So he took the ammonia on a small scale, and then he went over to Carl Bosch and said, hey, make this industrial. I can do it in small amounts in the lab. Let's get this show on the road and create massive compounds where all they did was create ammonia. So it's called the Haber-Bosch process. So they essentially had this industrial scale operation up and running by about 1913, which was the year before World War II broke out. So what's the significance of this? Well, there were two main significance at the time. So it was the prolonging of the war. The war wouldn't have been able to start, let alone go for as long as it did, if Germany wasn't receiving nitrogen and ammonia. It had to make its weapons, it also had to feed its people. And that wasn't going to happen if the British had their blockades up. So it definitely prolonged the war. And because the war was prolonged, there were more deaths. So more weapons, which means more ways to kill people. And Haber, as you saw in the previous video, also was working on gas warfare. So this, in combination with his gas warfare, the deaths were numerous. However, there is a good side, a silver lining to his process. This didn't occur at the time, but it did lead to the Green Revolution. Now, the Green Revolution started about a few years after World War I ended. And essentially, we took the Haber process and we created global fertility. So we were able to take the ammonia and the nitrates, synthetically create fertilizers that could be made in countries to fertilize their land, which essentially made more land fertile. And if more land was fertile, we could create more food. Now, having more food meant that the cost of fresh food started going down. Now, if food is available in mass amounts and it's cheap, people are going to eat more, and when they're in a happy, food-filled life, they're going to have babies, and that led to a massive population boom. So in the early 19th century, we had roughly 2 million people on Earth Now we have 7 billion people. So with a threefold increase going from 2 billion to 7 billion in the last 100 years alone, we can thank the Haber process for that. We've been able to create more food, and more food means we can feed more people. So our supermarkets would definitely not look the same if it weren't for the Haber process. So I hope you've learnt a lot and you can answer that dot point.